The In This League Podcast Network.
Gentlemen, get ready. It is time. We have got the Fireside Chat crew. That's right. The one, the only, Paul Sporer from Sleeper on the Bus and Mr. PitcherList himself. It is Mick Pollock on with Steve Bogman and Chris Welch. Sporer, Pollock, let's start with Sporer. What is up? I feel like I haven't talked to you forever, my dude.
It's been a minute, man. Just grinding, dude. This offseason never ended. Baseball is year-round for me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So been working on stuff, being in drafts. I'm in a 50-round draft and hold right now. So, just did well in fantasy football again, even though I don't care about it. So humble brag there.
Little poker. Last time I chatted with you, you were doing your nightly poker tournaments, and I jumped in.
Not nightly. I'm not a degenerate.
It's close.
Yeah, I would be if it was legal. I do Sunday tournaments. I do Sunday tournaments over at PokerStars, PokerStars.net. If you want to come through, Sunday night, $10. It's fun. You win like $150.
Doing the thing. And Nick Pollock, rising star pitcher list through the freaking roof. Nick, what's up, dude?
What has happened? It's good to see Chuck Welsh and Steve Bogman again. It's been so long that it's about time that I embarrass myself in front of you guys once again.
Yeah, embarrassed.
Right.
What are you talking about? You got a beautiful scenery. We get to see both of these wonderful gentlemen, by the way. And Nick has got a great, nice, you got all the foam up on the walls, very professional setting. Sporer is rocking a magnificent Expos hat, and we're going to get some dog action in the background. So
yeah, Charlotte's boofing under her breath. And if you have a dog, you know what boofing is.
Oh, yeah. We got the
half barks that are the most annoying thing ever.
What it is, and they're trying to tell you what's up. It's not anything else but to say hey, I know what's going on here.
Things are preparing.
By the way, can I just say, I can't believe that Turd Gurley says that he doesn't care about fantasy football at all. The original, the OG Turd Gurley.
Well, we used to do
Nerd Gurley.
Yeah, Nerd Girl.
I was Nerd Girl.
Yeah, that's right. You were Nerd Girl.
The other guy.
That's right.
We did a voicemail segment on football a couple years ago that we never did again because that was a disaster. But we had people doing bits, and then all of a sudden we get this one voicemail, and it was from a guy named Nerd Gurley, and they had
because you had somebody named Nerd Gurley who was like an every week type.
Every week, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Right,
and Nerd Gurley comes in with this super high pitched voice that was edited, and we didn't know who the hell it was until the end of the season. And Paul was like,
"I thought I knew it was.
I was Nerd.
I really did. I was like, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah,
we're playing poker at first pitch, and then Sporer looks at me and goes, "Hey, Bogman, I'm Nerd Gurley." I was like, "What?" It was like a wrestling reveal. It was crazy.
It needed a show. It needed this big thing, but it magnificent because it was just so under. It was just like, hey, I'm Nerd Gurley.
Well, because you guys were so certain you knew who it was, but then when we were together, you didn't say it was me. So I was like, well, I'm going to tell them.
Yeah. you needed like a
100% it was our guy Sorio. That's who I thought it was.
It needed like a Tony Stark entrance of just like press conference, like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Nerd Gurley.
Nerd Gurley.
On the episode today, as I said in the beginning, though, but now we got the guys on. This is going to be an interesting one, and you both are the best people to possibly have on for this. And it's actually difficult. You guys don't know this because you guys are you, but for us, we have to really plan out with our guests, and it's almost a card we hate to use. And I hate to use you two so early because there's so many great things we can have you on for. Whether it's having at the beginning of the year, obviously pitching stuff. There's just so much that it's very difficult to figure out where we would want to book you guys because then, we can't have you on for a little bit. But hopefully we've put you early enough that we can get you early on in the season. This one is great because I think regardless if people feel like they have the answer or not, this is the question that is following everybody and will be asked from today until the season starts, whenever the hell that's going to be coming off of the spring training news that we got just today as we're recording this, is how do we in fact interpret the 2020 season? And I know some people have tackled this early on. I feel like this is a decent time. Everybody has gone through drafts. People have done a lot more of their work, their processes. People have been challenged a bit more. This is a good time to do it. And we're going to go through some motions here of different things, injuries, hitters, pitchers, maybe analytics, stuff like that. And we're going to just kind of go through them and see if we can tackle it from both of your perspectives. So obviously we'll talk about everything that you guys have going on in your world. We'll talk about that at the end of the pod here. But if you guys are ready, let's just jump right into this bad boy. And I think the first one that jumps up to me is injuries. And how do we interpret guys that did well and didn't? And maybe the first one here is there were guys that were able to avoid injuries that have been injury prone. And Kershaw is a perfect example in my mind that people are like, well, I can't do the whole year. And he was able to put together a fantastic season, upping some stuff while it was in a shortened season. So, Paul, let's start with you. How are you going to look at guys that have had these injury-plagued seasons before that were able to be good in 2020? Are you going to say it's fixed? Are you going to hold it against them still? I mean, obviously looking at numbers, how do you interpret a guy specifically like Kershaw, let's say?
Well, here's the main thing. Globally, I don't hold injury histories too heavily against players because we're not that good at predicting injury. Yes, previous injury is the best indicator, but not everything is injury proneness. There is bad luck. You really have to be familiar with what the injuries are, even if they're multiple, like Giancarlo Stanton, for example, up until I think very recently, where he kind of had a similar thing this year that was persistent. It's been a lot of different injuries. So, and then he popped 2 155 game seasons out of nowhere. And like that happens. Remember guys like Ian Kinsler and Evan Longoria were injury prone guys, and you know, they can't stay healthy in like their 20s, and then their late 20s and 30s, they became the stalwarts who you could bank on for 155 games every single year. We just don't know. And so I'm not going to pass up talent putting on this artificial injury risk that I think I've assessed properly, because I know I haven't, particularly with pitchers. The idea that any pitcher is above an injury level is so unbelievably false. It's insane. DeGrom has like a 45% chance to get hurt because that's the going rate for pitchers. And he may be able to tweak that to like 40. And then maybe somebody like James Paxton is 55, but like they're all in this same band. So I'm not going to make these sharp adjustments up and down with my picks because of it.
So Nick, there's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. I don't want to dive too much into it early. It has to do with pitchers and maybe even how they attacked this season, because we're going to specifically talk about pitchers themselves. Mm-hmm. But you know, there definitely is an idea that these guys might have changed their routines in a shortened season. They found success because they weren't challenged. A lot of these guys still got innings on them. I mean, do you have, and I could even add this to the question, is like, do you have injury concern for those guys that avoided it this past year? Again, I'm using Kershaw as the example. There's plenty of other players. You use them as you will. How are you going to attack injuries, whether guys are more prone or they avoided it this past year? And is it something that you're going to give them a pass for?
So I think if we had any injury concerns entering last year, we shouldn't really adjust it. It's just too small of a sample to say like, oh, now they're gone from it after 2 months and 60 innings. In some cases, they're heightened because, I mean, we just don't know what their routines were. Some guys were easy to start it up again and then get into the groove of the year. Some guys it weren't. I mean, we even talk like Patrick Corbin, not even injury-wise, but I think maybe his velocity was affected because he just couldn't get into the groove of 2020. So it's really hard for me to look at 2020 and say, all right, well, this guy now, we should treat him differently than we did entering in 2020. And as far as like innings we expect from these injury players, I mean, Kershaw's a really good example where, yeah, he has been injured a lot, and he just had this really nice 2020 season, but he also has never been bad. And we have to keep in mind when it comes to certain guys, it's a case-by-case situation. Kershaw, when he's injured, he's still the minimum innings that he had was 149 since back to 2008, his rookie season. That's still production of him being really, really good. And when we look into 2021 and we have this general innings concern that I think we'll talk about some more, a guy like Kershaw that is injured in a certain way, well, he's still... let's say he gets 150. We're kind of expecting 150 for a lot of people. So it's actually not as much of a concern as it normally would be in that respect. So I think there are also guys that, you know, Jameson Taillon and Steven Strasburg both come to mind about once we see a healthy spring, those values will change too. Like, I don't know how to treat Steven Strasburg right now. Some people are scared about the carpal tunnel, but I'm not necessarily, because I really do believe he's going to be healthy in spring, as they keep saying. We've heard before people say, oh, he's going to be healthy in spring training, and then he isn't. So I get that, but it's hard to put a real weight on it at this point. And I do feel once we see them being healthy, we're going to be ramping them up in drafts and kind of forgetting about it again.
Boggs, I mean, like the next question, it's kind of designed for you, obviously, to ask, but, like we're all answering the guys that, I mean, you guys are throwing in some of the other players, but the idea of the first question is kind of like, hey, these are some players that, performed well, that didn't get injured, but something that, where Sporer says he doesn't really hold too much of the injury history against them, kind of like I do. Bogman, you do. And the players that get injured and then got injured last year, like I know those are going to hold even more weight to you.
Yeah, and I like what both these guys said, particularly Nick, when you said, look, if you had an issue with a guy going into 2020 and he didn't get hurt, or you didn't have an issue with him and he did get hurt in 2020, you shouldn't change it for 2021 because the sample size was so small. I really like that answer. My question for you, Sporer, is a guy, extreme examples like Stanton, like Strasburg. Are you obviously you don't knock them because they are talented, but a guy specifically like, Strasburg, who couldn't even make it through a short season without missing multiple starts, is that something where you're still just not holding it against him because, look, everyone, it's kind of the opposite. Like everyone says, well, they're all healthy until they're not. Sure. Are you kind of like, well, they're all, unhealthy until they're not, like you mentioned with the examples of Kinsler and I can't remember who
and Longoria. Yeah, I mean, like with Strasburg, I think something like that is kind of built into his ADP. Like he's not going where Strasburg would normally go, so I think it's kind of already there. And that's another big thing that I'm always cautious of is double counting an injury. A guy goes 288, but he's extremely talented because he gets hurt all the time. And then people say, yeah, but he gets hurt a lot. I can't take him. Well, that's why he's 288. You got to understand like what's driving the ADP for a guy. And when that injury is factored in there enough, I'm still ready to jump. And with Strasburg, I definitely am because there's a lot of panic out there.
And that's an actual scouting technique too. It's like when, a guy throws hard, when he's at a, whatever, where they're featuring him, and you don't count it twice. A guy runs fast at the 40-yard, at the combine. You already know he's fast. If he puts up a good time, you don't count it twice. So I like that. It works both ways. It can't cut against them twice, and it can't bump them up.
But what about a guy like, a guy like Judge? I mean, Judge has had lots of nicks and bruisey type of things. He kind of had it again last year. I guess his ADP is kind of built in. It isn't. It isn't. Like Judge
he's he's Stanton a few years ago.
Okay, so
still trusted because of that underlying capability. And
but what do you think about him though? Because that I feel like he is one of the only examples. There might be another one or two we could look at an ADPs of, because you're right. A lot of guys, their injury past and whatnot is built into it. Stanton, Steven Strasburg, Judge isn't quite. And last year was a weird mix for Judge.
I think he kind of is though, in that he still has like MVP caliber talent. So that way the ADP can only go so far. It's a matter of understanding how much the injury will actually push him down based on what he can do when he does play. In fact, even when he misses time, though, like Nick said about Kershaw, he's never been bad, so you're still getting high performance on a Judge, and then you get to fill in that spot. And then if it's 10-team, 12-team league where the waiver wire is going to be more plentiful, maybe you do take him a little bit higher. If it's 15-team league, maybe you're a little bit more cautious because the pool is going to be a little bit more shallow on the waiver side. So, that's the assessment that you have to make there. Judge, probably a little too rich for me. I don't think it's quite baked in maybe to my degree, but it's still right there. Like when he came up in this 50-team, 50-rounder that I'm in right now, I was like, I can kind of consider him here. So I think it is about right. The market's pretty good at assessing that injury risk for guys.
Okay. And, something it would have been, as a better host, I would have maybe led with this question to get us in here. And so let me do that here before we start tackling, because injuries might be its own little bug. And I like that we were able to attack injuries here. We're going to tackle hitting and pitching and even some of like projections and stuff like that. But I'll start with you, Nick. And do this as best as possible without giving away all the good, tricks and tips that we're going to do and we're going to talk about here. But do you have like a mission statement, an overarching quick thesis of what your interpretation of the 2020 season is? Like, is it simple as I'm just not going to count it? I'm reading 70% of what happened into it. Like, what is your overarching statement of the shortened season?
case
to
by
this year?
case. There's no one answer.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that are going to have significant changes that we're just not going to ignore. Just like, looking at Trevor Bauer before he had his breakout season. Well, we saw in the second half of 2017 that he was actually making the changes before the 2018 season, right? Like that stuff doesn't change necessarily because of the shortened season. So if you see things that actually are good, good metrics, and we'll talk about what those things are later, that doesn't matter necessarily as much. Now, it's really, really hard to like distinguish what is a narrative essentially for 2020 and how sticky it is. And that's obviously the difficult part here. But you can't just do one broad brush, be like, okay, I'm going to do 70, 30%, something like that. It's just, it needs more nuance than that.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think what gets messy about that is when you go case by case basis, people, as we all do, though, we create our own narratives to a player. We like a player, we dislike a player, and we say, well, this 2020 season's real for this guy. This one's not for real, this guy. So it can get messy, but you're right. You also can't just say it doesn't matter. It does matter. It's only 70%.
The thing of it is,
Paul, same thing for you.
We do that in full seasons too, though.
Right.
So, we can't pretend that this is the first time we do it. We've washed away entire 6-month seasons for a guy because of a reason that
people are doing it. That's why we're doing a whole episode on it, because there are people on Twitter who have spent their last 2 months and are going to spend the next 2 months giving the narrative to everybody. Hey, by the way, everything that happened is bullcrap. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Or everything that did happen. So it's so divisive right now in that. So what is your mission statement to it, if you can, Paul? I
mean, it's also case by case. I've always been a fan of game logging, especially on pitching, to kind of see how their numbers were built. 2 bad starts is a lot worse, is a lot better for me to digest than like 6 mediocre ones that push a guy to like a 4.70 ERA or something like that. And this is more important than ever, because one bad start could have made you look like a complete terrible pitcher, like a 5 ERA, because you were super solid through 8 starts and then you gave up 10 runs. So I'll be looking at things like that, just kind of how the trajectory went. As far as hitters go, they kind of have core skills. I'm not going to overreact too much. Like I said, it's a spice. 2020 is a spice, not part of the mix this year in terms of assessing the stats.
Okay. I like that. I like the spice metaphor there. I like that one, Paul. That's a good one. And
you're Sporty Spice, by the way. You're like Sporty Spice, and I think Nick is posh.
I'm Diabetes Spice.
I was going to go with a Dune reference, a spice flows, but you know what? That's how we're different here, Welsh.
I mean, I'm a Spice Pro. You're a Dune guy. I don't know what to tell you.
It almost feels like an extended version of the playoffs, you know what I mean? Where a guy, and we even have it this year too, like Randy Arozarena, who goes absolutely crazy in the playoffs or completely sinks in the playoffs. And that guy becomes, when you're looking at ADPs from NFBC in November and December and times like that, where like Arozarena completely spiked after the playoffs, and now he's coming back down to earth a little bit. It almost feels like the 2020 season, because it was so shortened, is like a nice playoff run.
Yeah, it has definitely something like that. So let's jump into hitters. And let's talk. We've got Bogman's put some player debates together. We just got a couple questions. This is an overarching one, not necessarily trying to pick into each player, though. Love to get your takes on it. Luke, use a couple extremes here. Luke Voit destroyed the ball last year in a small sample size. He really, really held up. Not that his season was propped up by it, because it wasn't, but August was fantastic for him. He hit 326 with 11 homers. Between September and October of last year, his average went way down back to earth, but he still hit 9 homers. So he's a big power guy. And we saw his cost. It was up in the 50s to start early drafts. And I think it's leveled down to around the 70s. But that is to be fair, regardless if you believe it or not, it is a short sample size of dominant numbers in a shortened season. Now, the inverse of it, let's take not the same type of player, Ketel Marte. Ketel Marte, practical batting title type of guy in 2019, power, big pop. All of the Diamondbacks in 2020 struggled. Ketel Marte at the very top of it. He still hit relatively well, I think right around 289 or 290 or something like that. He didn't hit where he was, but his power numbers dropped. All of it dropped, and people get to win and run through a wall because they're so happy Ketel Marte failed because no one believed in his power. But those are two extreme examples on both ends. And Ketel Marte versus Luke Voit in 2019 is a hilarious conversation because there's no way those guys are close. Yet Luke Voit has been, I don't actually know, I'm not looking at NFBC data, has been going ahead of Ketel Marte across the board. So it's a short sample size. So Nick, let's start with you here. Luke Voit, short sample size, dominates, power leader. Ketel Marte, huge batting average player, was a top 30 player coming into this year. He fails. Case-by-case basis, talk to me about those two extremes.
I mean, Luke Voit, though, 2019, before the injury, he had a 381 WOBA. Essentially, that's until the end of June. And then he comes back and he has a 315 WOBA. It was talked about by Eno and DVR in the Rates and Barrels podcast, and like made me alert of it. Like, oh, right, he had this core injury and that messed him up in 2019. Without the core injury, had a really successful 2020. I trust the skills a bit with Luke Voit. I understand where his draft stock is right now. It makes sense to me. I personally like a couple other guys at first base at the price, but I don't think that Luke Voit is, had this all of a sudden crazy 2020 that we didn't really expect. We had indications from it from 2019. So it's not as shocking to me.
And 18, by the way.
Yeah,
almost a
great
copy.
point.
It was 47 games to 56. Similar size sample, also extremely dominant. Now, we haven't seen the extreme dominance over a full year yet, but Nick took the words out of my mouth as far as citing 19 stuff, and I added in 18 there. This isn't completely new. I think it's just that he stood out this year in the 2-month season.
And he was given the time. I think that was another
Right.
big thing. Like that was always, I think, one of the things I've always had a struggle with is, this great player that is doing this has never clicked. And he may have had spurts of good, but there's been injuries and non-commitment to him being the guy until the shortened season.
Andahar would take that time though. And so, I remember debating pretty hard on pro Voit side. That was definitely one I got right this year in a sea of wrong. So that's why I'm bragging about it, not to be a clown about it. But, I thought they were definitely going to have to play him. I just didn't know why they wouldn't allow a guy with this kind of power to not really see what he can do. And he became a star. I think if you really want a comparison, and as much as I love him, and this is the fun thing about fantasy baseball sometimes, is your sleeper pick from one year actually completely clicks, and then you don't want to touch him the next year because the price goes absolutely through the roof. And this is the debate I'm having with Luke Voit right now, because I still love him, but he's giving me real Pete Alonso vibes in that you couldn't have paid me to take Pete Alonso in 2020 coming off that elite season, given the other guys who are available. Well, Voigt's experiencing the exact same thing, not to the exact same degree. He's in the 60 pick range right now, Voit is, and I think Alonso was in like the 40 pick range, top 40 this year. But you've got Matt Olson at 88, Max Muncy at 94, Rizzo at 99, and Goldie at 100. And Olson and Muncy were two guys last year that I had the same exact thing with Alonso. So if I'm going to be intellectually honest here, and I love Voit, but I can't take him this year. Olson and Muncy, 20 plus picks cheaper. It's such a much easier pick.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
What are you doing on the other end with Ketel? Because Ketel showed almost no power last year, got hurt at the end. Just not a great year from many Diamondbacks hitters, much to the chagrin of the Welsh and I. What do you think about Ketel going into this year?
Let me throw this into, because I'm glad Bogman brought it back, because it was important, I think, to not necessarily just talk about those players, but talk about, like, these are extreme versions of what people are dealing with. And if you want to take Voit out, because Paul, everything you said, because we were talking off air and I was a little negative about Voit, I'm just not into him. It's a lot about his value, though, because what you said is the most important thing to me. There are guys later. Rizzo, one we'll do a debate on. I'm back into Rizzo. The value just works. And there's other really great plays to have in there. Even Alec Boehm is kind of going after all those guys. So that's one of my biggest takes on it. But if you want to throw in, here's some other, you throw in Teoscar Hernandez, who had shown signs and then popped. Maybe he's going to be kind of in the same vein for you. I got
bigger issues with him. Where's the fundamental change in his season? What really changed to spur that? That looks like a standard Teoscar 2-month hot run that we've maybe seen before, at least to some degree. I want to believe, but I just don't have, I don't have anything to grab onto that isn't what Teoscar's already done, which is swing wildly, but with a lot of force and make more contact right now, or not even more contact because he still struck out way too much, but his contact was just so rich and so rewarded that
guess what? He's going 11 picks higher than Ketel Marte right now. Yeah. So that's the idea. So like back to Bogman's point.
To get back to Marte here, as I know you want to, I think the tough part is that his 20 kind of matches 18. And when 19 stands out as that big outlier, what's the first thing that projections do? Pull him back toward 18 and say, not that he's going to necessarily be that guy 100%, but that's where he's going to lean back toward. Well, he did in a big way. The power completely went away. And, outside of maybe some homer to fly ball luck, 18 and 20 look just about the same. High contact, bit of speed, not much else. Problem is that last part, the bit of speed. They don't leverage his speed. And obviously that is something that you can't just have forever. He's still fast. He's in the 70th percentile. He can still run. But the Diamondbacks have never given him the opportunity to. So if that power's not there, it's still a pretty bland profile for a top 80, 85 pick for Marte. I think some of the power will return, but will it be enough? Is he like a 12 guy or a 15-10 guy? With a good average, like that's still going to be a good dollar value, but do you really want that in the top 100 when you can still get, Jeff McNeil, Max Muncy, Jose Altuve, Dylan Moore? I don't know. I'm a little peeled back on Ketel Marte. Same kind of deal though. Liked him before, he breaks out. Now I'm peeling back because it just doesn't feel right where he's at.
How about this real quick before we go to Nick? If you had to buy one at their current price, Ketel or Voit?
And Ketel is 79 and Voit is 63.
I got to buy Voit because here, even with the only issue I have with him is that there's good and what I think are equal. I think Matt Olson and Luke Voit are 1-1. The only issue is that I believe that Luke Voit can hit 50 homers. Like that's completely possible. With Marte, I don't know what I'm even getting because they don't run with him enough to kind of have that stability. If I thought he was going to get 20 SBs like locked with the chance at 25 plus his batting average, I wouldn't even really be that concerned about the power. But the Diamondbacks don't run.
They don't run.
You guys really think they're going to start running this year? I doubt it.
No. The other element of Marte that we kind of forget about is that the 19 Diamondbacks lineup was better than the one that it is now. So you look at the runs and RBI totals above 90 for Marte in 2019. I don't think it's going to be close to that.
I still don't understand how they were so bad this year, though. That was a miss for me.
That's why, to me, and sorry, Nick, we want to get you going here.
Go ahead.
It's one of these things that I don't know how you quantify it, but there are teams, and it has happened, and the Diamondbacks were an example of it. There are teams that system-wide struggle. The Cubs are another one of those where it's like you could pinpoint, like, all right, Bryant, and then Baez, and then all of a sudden, like, how is the whole team bad? How are they all shitty? And then that's the Diamondbacks. But that's the and that's the Diamondbacks too. They were all bad. There's got to be something in it, whether it's the coaching, whether it's mental struggles. Like you don't want to give them.
It can be a team slump because it's such a small period of time.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, how many guys? We think about it and individual players. Did we say, "Oh my God, I would have loved to see him get 4 more months because he would have he was just turning the corner when the season ended." Nick would have been like, Ponce de Leon was going to have 4 nice months after that September there. There's guys that my boy Frankie Montas had gotten through that back injury. He was about to turn the corner. I think he was to have a big 4 months. I will say though, that's pretty good that he didn't because now the price is cheaper because he has like a 5 ERA or whatever. But I think that it can be like that with a team, though, too. Think about the teams that don't get going until June. There's a couple every year, right? And maybe they would have been because they're not that fundamentally different. Yeah, Eduardo Escobar was going to come back to the pack, but not to a 61 OPS plus. Come on. Christian.
Well, a lot of that probably, Paul, had to do with coach and team preparation. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And how do you prepare for this weird pandemic year? So that probably, like you said,
some players too probably
something else you throw into the stew in the mix.
Yeah, they probably had a little extra, poundage or something. It was hard, dude. The beginning of the pandemic, remember that hellscape that was like there was one balance of, oh, there's so many things I can do that none of us did, by the way. But then there was also like, how long is this going to, and the players, some of them might have just sat back a little bit and then they're like, oh crap, we're playing. I got to try to get back in shape. And we don't know all those that they are, but maybe the Diamondbacks had 6 or 7 of them, because I just don't believe that talent is that low.
I agree.
It's a good call out by Nick about the 90 plus 90, but I'm just saying that it could turn back this year.
Well, I mean, it's Cole Calhoun, then Marte, then Christian Walker, then David Peralta, Eduardo Escobar, Dalton Varsho, Nick Ahmed, and Carson Kelly.
World Series,
that's a roster resource lineup right now. It does actually make me think, maybe Christian Walker is a little bit better as a later add, just because he's batting third. And if you're batting third, that's really good. But bring this back to Marte. Yes. The runs an RBI total up to 180. I don't think that's going to happen.
That's fair.
You're essentially getting Marte be like, cool, I got an average and some pop. How much pop is a question? It was a sub 4% home run fly ball rate. That there's no way that's sticking around. It was a 19% in 2019. Maybe there's a chance he get closer to that 19 again and hint at that. And then you can see something like 25 home runs and like a 300 average, and that could be really, really good. I don't think at this price, you were saying around 80 ADP, I think there are other second base options. I will say, when you're drafting, you need a plan for this. Second base, like first base too, is really, there is a cliff that gets hit. And you can find yourself in a position where you do not have one. And I think that itself is pushing up Marte's value a little bit, or at least his draft stock, because guys don't want to be left without a second base that they want to start through the year. So there is something to that there, but I mean, I'm looking around it right now. I'm seeing Altuve, Dylan Moore, Max Muncy, Jeff McNeil, Mike Moustakas, all after Ketel Marte, and I don't think I'd pay the premium to get Ketel.
No, there's other, like Nick Solak, I think is going to be better than Marte this year.
One thing I do with prospects, one thing I'll always give benefit of the doubt for, and I'm looking for if you're going up and down in development, are guys that are really good hitters. And regardless of everything we're talking about, Ketel Marte is a really, really good hitter. And if you look over on StatCast, since his rookie year, he's improved his hard hit percentage every single season. Actually, there's a 17-18 that was about stalled, and then it's continued to improve. And he's a great bat to ball guy. So the hope would be Arizona is a hitter friendly spot. You're right in a projection standpoint. If 2 of the 3 years mirror each other more than the one off year, we're going to assume the worst. Just being around and seeing how Ketel Marte is, I think it's a 25 plus home run hitter, and the position is a little bit wonky, but this is the type of thing. Some people don't see him as a value, but positionally he might look a little bit value. Speaking of, Bog, you put together some debates here. We got some guys that kind of, they kind of ring of all of this. One guy that suffered, one guy that was good. Let's blow through a couple of these debates and see if we can get to the bottom of some of these.
Yeah, lightning round debates, not like our usual player debates where we do a whole show, but Sporer. But the first one I have here is in a lightning round debate here, Nick, is Rizzo versus Dom Smith. Where would you go at first base there between
and consider their ADP value in all of these too? It doesn't have to be one for one.
No, I want Rizzo every time. Rizzo, it's. I'm not saying I don't like Dom Smith, but I mean it's just floor consistency. I know he just had like a 228 average. I remember in 2019 talking about Rizzo after the first month, and he had a 228 average after April, and we're like, oh, is this the end of Anthony Rizzo? At the end of that season, he had a average around 283. Which is like, all right, that's completely fine. Actually, before this year, he's had a batting average above 270 since 2014. I mean, this was just a small year. His power was still there, 11 home runs. He's still going to be in the middle of the Cubs lineup, and I know it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still Ian Happ who has performed well. It's still, as of right now, Chris Bryant and Javier Baez still there. Like, it's not going to be as if he has nobody around him. Anthony Rizzo is just a lot safer, and you know that you have a solid first baseman at this point. Dominic Smith has a lot of things to think about as far as like how much is he going to hit. We still don't know about the DH, and is Dominic Smith going to be where in that lineup? Pete Alonso is going to be first. Let's talk about platooning. I don't believe for a second. Starting left, I mean, they have a lot of options in the outfield.
They've already said that they don't want him starting.
They don't want him.
They don't want him there, but they probably know that the DH is going to be there. If the DH isn't there, though, he's not sitting. Like
I understand, but the fact that there's any question about how much you're going to see of Dominic Smith to me is like a clear indication. Like, why would I add that to the list? Like, just take Rizzo.
Yeah, I mean, I think. What's that?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I just don't. I don't see any way Dom Smith sits, so I'm not worried about that. But I do have to agree about taking Rizzo. he's just too cheap right now, plain and simple. He's only 31 years old. A 218 BABIP is so unlucky, and definitely somebody who would have come out of this in another 4 months of playing time. Maybe he doesn't get back to 293 that he hit in 2019, but he gets pretty high. I think he'd probably be in the 280s by the end of the season, just based on what he's been able to do and even what he did in 2020. The underlying skills say that he was going to turn it around batting average wise. And as Nick mentioned, the power was still there, perfectly capable. You got to take Rizzo.
I'm very pro Rizzo here. Since 2018, he has shown himself, maybe even further. He has been a slow starter. Giving it to you guys here. 2018, first half had a batting average of 242. He finished the second half with a 329, or he had it in the second half. Also, BABIP in the first half, 249. Second half, 337. 2019, he had a batting average of 272 in the first half, 320 in the second half. That was 272 BABIP and 352 BABIP in 2019. This year, in only 50 games, which would qualify as a start, he had a 218 BABIP. So he's a typical slow starter, and he needs more of the season to ramp up. So it's more reason. I agree. I think he's insanely cheap, and he's one of the reasons you go with it. I'm Team Rizzo here. Bogman, you're Team Rizzo too?
Yeah, I'm definitely Team Rizzo. I agree with all the points that Nick made about if there's any question about these guys, then lean on the one that has fewer questions. And he does hit, just over his career, he hits 9 points better in the second half overall, Rizzo.
Yeah, as you can see it typically. Kyle Lewis versus Giancarlo Stanton. This is an interesting one. It's hard because Stanton also probably qualifies as utility on most spots. So, Paul, let's start with you. Kyle Lewis, big, awesome rookie year, but he had those Luis Robert
UT only, right?
Yeah, UT only. Didn't I say that? Or UT only is
at UT as if in addition to outfield. I thought you were suggesting.
Oh yeah, no, he's only a utility in most spots, which really kind of hurts him. So, but he's still Giancarlo Stanton. Giancarlo Stanton versus Kyle Lewis.
I don't want to play the team need thing because that's the easy way out because Lewis does run. I think I probably will take Stanton. He's still coming. He's coming out and pick 120 area. And for that kind of transcendent power, which we actually did see in the playoffs, he hit 6 home runs in a 7-game run in the playoffs for them. We know what he can do when he's healthy. Again, this isn't about talent. This is nothing about talent. This is about health. I'm going to take my shot. I'm going to gamble at pick 121. This is where I think the price is. The injury is built into the price. I'm going to take Stanton here and spike that massive upside.
I've been doing the same thing. Nick, what do you think? Giancarlo Stanton, only utility, changing power, or rookie of the year, and Kyle Lewis?
No, I'm taking Stanton as well. I mean, I am a little terrified of the soft body issues, injuries for Giancarlo Stanton.
You had it right the first time, soft body.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I appreciate you, Bogman. And Lewis does have his fair share of question marks. I mean, the 29% strikeout rate is something we were kind of afraid of entering it, and it still kind of stuck around. Not to say that Kyle Lewis is not going to be a benefit to you, but I mean, I would much rather go for a guy like Stanton than that I get value from it. As Sporer mentioned before, okay, when he is hurt, then you replace it with something else. It's not like you just get Kyle Lewis for the entire year, Stanton for the entire year, and you just get nothing in return when he's injured.
And Lewis's health is not, above discussing. That's what slowed him down and kind of cut him down prospect list. That is part of why he's 135 though too. So we're not going to double count it, but it's in there too. Yeah, I think Stanton's the pick here, but a lot of people have sworn off him.
And I think that's like maybe the most fascinating one that's on here too, because it's like rookie of the year. Kyle Lewis probably helped people win some leagues, and Giancarlo Stanton is one of those guys that definitely is on the precipice of being the guy that people are going to write off forever and just say, nope, you're also utility now. You're always injured. Bogman has written him off, and I still don't quit. Bogman, let's skip let's go to the last one. This is one you put together. I think this is a great one because this guy has been brought up by both of these players.
So really quickly, I'm so sorry. Can I just take 30 seconds? I got a package delivered that normally gets stolen. I just want to.
Yeah, go get it.
No, so sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so you asked the last.
Imagine having to worry about your packages getting stolen. That's insane.
I have. They make me pay for a fucking locker here at my apartment.
I left a case of Red Bull out on the porch all day yesterday. No one was gonna fucking steal it.
I'm pretty sure my neighbor had a goddamn laptop just sitting at his door for almost the full day.
Wild.
But shit happens.
One of my neighbors during the Christmas season had like, I swear to God, there were like 9 packages in front of their door, just stacked up. And I was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you really trust this neighborhood too.
Yeah, you do. It's an
Or they're just the
a ringing
most
endorsement.
lazy person that has ever lived.
You
It's
guys
one of the
rock.
two.
Thank you
I
so
guess.
much.
Also potential. What'd you get?
New microphone.
Oh,
Hey,
Nice.
what kind?
SM7B.
That's the one. That's the baby.
So I want to
Very
get rid of the Yeti.
Yeah, I'm thinking about RE20 going back to SM7. It's my favorite.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's SM7's the best. All right,
I like
Boggs,
this.
you ask the next debate, and then we'll do the next one. It'll do the quick break, and then we'll go into pitchers projections.
Got it. All right.
All right.
All right, Nick, how about this one for a quick debate here? Dylan Moore versus Jose Altuve. This is a very, 2020 versus the rest of the career one.
Yeah, I'm going Altuve a lot here. Dylan Moore, I really liked him last year. I had opportunities like Mike Moustakas going on the COVID list and getting injured. Then Dylan Moore just kind of saved my season last year. But Jose Altuve, he's not this bad. He just isn't. Look, it was a weird year, 2020, but also the fact that he came out and talked about his mentally he just wasn't there because of all the fans hating on him. And it was affecting him. He's not a 5 home run, 2 stolen base, 219 hitter. We know this. It's still a good Astros. It's still a good Astros lineup. He's going to perform well. While Dylan Moore, there's no guarantee that he's going to repeat 8 home runs and 12 stolen bases. 255 average, 27% K rate along the way. It's a little risky there too. I think Altuve's the way safer play.
And Altuve hated it with no fans. Wait until there are actual fans back in the stands. It might get
That's
ugly
true.
for him.
It's interesting to hear that's a buy. That it sounds like that's one of those players that's an actual I'm buying back in. I don't believe any of 2020. I know the bat Sporer just put. I think Moore was one of 6 players to project at a 2020 season for this coming year, which was kind of a shocker for a lot of people to see him up on there. But like Bogman said, Altuve or
well, it also
Moore.
came with a 230 average in the bat too for Dylan Moore.
Yeah.
Just to be fair there.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, 229 average there. But because he had 9 and 11 with a 206 back in 2019, we kind of seen the power speed dynamic from Dylan Moore, and I actually do buy into him a bit. I'm intrigued, but as far as this competition, it kind of goes back to the Rizzo debate there, where you're just taking on unnecessary risk with Moore that isn't as plentiful with Altuve. It's not guaranteed that he's going to get back to who he was, or even maybe not. He's not going to go back to his peak, but he's a year removed from a 31 homer season. He had 298 with 31 homers and 6 steals back in 2019. And, for however much you want to put onto it, he was elite in the playoffs. He really started to look like himself. He had 5 homers in 60 plate appearances, big hot 2-week run there for Altuve. I gotta lean on the veteran, the discounted veteran here. Those are going to be a hot market.
Yeah, and I think, Boggs, you and I both agree on that. It's really interesting, too, if people don't realize Bogman put this debate together. It's because they're within 5 spots of each other on NFBC. So it's not I think in your brain, you could be like, oh, that's an interesting one. Let's talk about that versus where they're going. No, they're going in the same round of each other. And I see a lot of people making the excuses to not take Altuve or other players so they can get more. But I think you guys are on it.
New toy syndrome.
Yeah, and there's also just a lot of inherent risk you're taking on with batting average. That's what I have a worry about some of these guys that popped off that I'd even slightly say with Voit, it's just you're going to pay a top 50 price on him and he might hit 250 or 240 more like a career, not what he did in 1 month of last season. So it's just you take on those risks and be careful about them.
There's one element I think that is causing them to be closer. And in NFBC, I know a lot of guys do like to overpay for stolen bases. So essentially, if they're trying to fill up their second base slot, they think Dylan Moore is the better fit because, I got 20 plus stolen bases, while Altuve,
and he plays
had 17 in 2018, 2019, 2020. He totaled about 25 in that time. Yeah. And Dylan Moore is going to get more there. So fine, you know what? I've crafted this really good lineup, and he's the guy. He's the only guy left that I can really trust for stolen bases while not killing my runs and home runs as well. that might be why you see Dylan Moore rising up. A really good point there, Sporer, about also adding the outfield eligibility too. So there's another option that you have to fill. Moore is that last piece of the puzzle, which is why I think in NFBC that he's getting pushed up a little bit more than we like.
It's definitely turned up in
Still take
NFBC.
Altuve.
It's definitely turned up to stolen base in NFBC, but I mean that's also something that's happening overall. Just people looking for those stolen bases, and well, this guy's going to get him for me, and this guy probably won't, so I'll go with this guy.
Oh, what'd be interesting is seeing because since October we've been running mock drafts to create an ADP, like just a very consumer ADP. I'd be very curious at where Moore has been. Maybe we'll look on a break or something. I wonder what like he's sitting at on our own ADP, because obviously
comparison between that and like the NFBC and Fantrax. With what you guys are building, that's going to be really interesting data, I think.
I'll try and find it while we're going here.
Okay, cool. So let's do this. We'll take a quick break in a second here because we're going to get into some awesome stuff with pitchers and projections. But my question would be, because we've kind of tackled this, and so if you've got any other names, you guys have really done a good job pinpointing on both sides, guys you don't buy into and guys you do buy into. But for 2020, let's start with you, Nick. Who are you buying into less than anybody else? Everybody else is giving them the pass for what they did in 2020, but you're not buying into what they did in the shortened season. And give me the inverse of that. Someone whose 2020 season popped that you're like, yeah, no, I buy into this.
So I'm going to go with a pitcher because I like.
But no, we're doing hitters now.
Oh, no.
Yeah, this is hitters. This is hitters.
No!
We have a hitter. We have a pitcher one.
Fine. It's fine. I'll deal with this. No, I think that Nick Castellanos is this bad. I'm very I see he had this low average all of a sudden. I'm like, what are you doing? That's not.
Well, and he started so hot too, right?
Like and then the whole Reds team. Think of the whole Reds situation too. All
like the Diamondbacks. And then they underperformed, and they're even a bigger underperformer because they have more talent, I think. But it's the same kind of thing, or a whole teams.
Yeah, you could
just futzed right out of there.
I was going to throw in Mike Moustakas in there too. I think Mike Moustakas is a really good discount.
Maybe the Reds in general are your call.
Eugenio Suarez, let's go. He still had a ton of home runs and a lot of power in that, and we'll get those runs in RBI. But Nick Castellanos to me is the one that's like, oh yeah, I'm still very much in on Nick Castellanos. I was in on him entering 2020. I don't think anything has innately changed with him. So I don't buy his 2020. I am buying his 2021.
Okay. What do you think, Paul? Guy that you bought for 2020, guy that you don't believe 2020. What do you got for us?
I got a little combo thing here on the buy into less, just based on different interpretations. I don't buy what Teoscar Hernandez did. I don't think he's at some new level that's going to pay out in his ADP now.
Even though his hard hit stuff, like he was mashing the ball. That was probably the biggest change. Absolutely murdering it.
He does do that. That was a huge change, but it was a 2-month run. And I don't know. He needs to keep doing that at that clip, which is pretty hard when you strike out 30% of the time. And so you're just leaving a lot to chance there, paying full price. I know he throws in a little speed to go with the pop. It's just a little pricey for me at pick 74. I'll take teammate Lourdes Gurriel 5 picks later, who I buy in much more. But another one that I buy into less would be on the negative end. Willie Calhoun was awful, and his price is gone. I mean, it is way, way, way down. Pick 369. Nice. I'm jumping on that all day. He was awful. But there's no two ways around it. It was a month too. That's the thing too. Some of these guys that played half the season. Now you're talking a month. How much would you really assess a guy off a month? I give nothing into weight for that with regards to Willie Calhoun. So I'm buying less into that than other guys. And then someone I totally buy into is Luke Voigt. I believe that he's a 50 homer capable guy. His price relative to others makes it so that I will not have him on a bunch of teams. But I think those are alternating ideas that I think can still work and be and still match up, even though they sound contradictory.
So I really like the Calhoun pick, by the way. I don't know if you remember 2019, but like the second half, like he won leagues for you.
He
and
really
we were all really
got it
excited. Then 2020 hits, he gets a ball to the face.
Yes.
Messes him up, and then he doesn't get normalized for 2020, and there you go. That's bad. And it's like, oh no, but you had this great opportunity, Willie Calhoun, and now he has it again. Look, he's batting third in the Rangers lineup. He should not be past pick 300. This should be even 12 teamers. Like, why not take a chance at Willie Calhoun? Like,
Yeah.
you're going to be looking to fill in an outfielder spot or a utility spot through the year in 12 teamers. You should be planning for that. Willie Calhoun is exactly the kind of guy you should be taking a chance on early, and he might just be killing it from the beginning from the 3-hole for Texas.
Yep.
I really like that one. I realized I didn't pick as someone that I liked and bought into for 2020. Paul Goldschmidt. Let's do it. Like 260 average in 2019. We're all like, oh no, he's done.
Over. Yep.
304 in 2020. I don't think he's going to have a 300 plus average necessarily, but swing strike rate went down to 8%. Like the things that were going the wrong direction for Goldschmidt in 2019 went back the other way.
Yeah. Didn't they like all turn positive?
It's fantastic. 18.6% K rate. He hadn't had a sub 20% K rate in his entire career. 16% walk rate is the second highest of his career. Like this, I'm not saying that he's going to replicate exactly that, but the reason he was discounted entering 2020 is because we thought it was the decline. And Goldschmidt said, like, no, I'm still pretty damn good. So, yeah, I'm very much in on this. Again, middle of a lineup. He's going to be getting 180 plus runs in RBI likely again, probably over 25 home runs. Could easily be above 30 again, as he did it for 3 straight years from 17, 18, and 19.
Yeah.
I don't see why you wouldn't want to go with Goldschmidt. I'd rather go with him above Rizzo and Dom Smith. And a lot of the other guys, I'd rather go and get Goldschmidt at pick 100 and change than Luke Voigt.
He's another.
You can't hear anything good about Goldie over all the Cardinals fans bitching about him.
No, yeah, that's the thing. Like that's another reason that you can't really buy Voigt is that Goldie is coming even after Olsen, Muncy, and Rizzo. And I agree. And there is like a little concern about the power with regards to Paul Goldschmidt, but I wonder if that's really just him being off of his average homer to fly ball rate, which is a career 20, and he was at 11%. Even if you regress that back up to say 16%, he doesn't quite get back to his previous numbers there because the launch angle did come down a little bit. That's still more power. So yeah,
sure.
Great call out there with Goldie.
And you even mentioned in like the power and stuff, like it's gonna be weird. Fangraphs has him at 28% hard hit rate, but Statcast has him at 41%. So I really wouldn't read into it anyway. I think the power should come back just like you.
Goldie's an interesting one because when I was first doing my ranks, like when I saw where I put a Goldie versus what like the NFBC stuff was, I was like, oh, I'm a bit off here. I'm a little bit high on Goldie, but I had Goldie above Luke Voigt, and that felt like that probably felt like an overreach at that time, but I think it makes a little bit more sense.
I don't know that it necessarily is. Like, Vlad Jr. is above all these guys we've mentioned, by the way, including Voigt, Olsen, Muncy.
He's so skinny though, Paul.
Yeah.
He's best shape of his life.
I mean, that's certifiably insane.
Him and Welsh have been on the same diet, so they both lost a bunch of weight. By the way, just looking back at the ITL ADP numbers overall since October, Altuve 91, Dylan Moore 144. So
really speaks to Nick's point about Moore being pushed up in the NFBC market.
It really does. And they both fell in, if we're looking at just December, they both fell. Altuve fell about 5 spots to 96, but Moore was in the 150s. So they're both dropping a little bit. I think.
By the way, I love that price on Moore in the more open market there. I would buy that a lot. And I could see myself getting both guys at that point. But yeah, in NFBC, they're closer, and you got to go Altuve. I think.
Nice little plug for our Patreon. People want to check out. You can check out all the awesome stuff we have. Plus, we've got this ADP and a brand new one coming up. All right, quick break here, ITL. When we come back, our boys are going long with us, so hopefully they can still stick. But, it's just a good conversation. We can't stop it. We've got pitchers. We've got projections. More Paul, more Nick. Quick break right here. All right, it's time for the main course here because we're going to talk about pitchers in 2020 and how we deal with them. Now, there's a theory or a theory of thought here, and I'm curious if you guys buy into this, that pitchers were more comfortable reaching back with limited innings last year and potentially upticking their velocity. We saw quite a few guys be able to do that. Not everybody. It's not a one-for-one. So, if that's the case, this would equal, some big, powerful stuff. But if that's also the case, this coming year, in theory, we would have a track back down. So let's start with you on this one. What do you think about the idea that there were a lot of pitchers that were holding stuff back? And, in normal seasons this year, they've only got 50 or 6 innings. So they just let it loose like they're a reliever. And these, upticked velocities and maybe experimental stuff had a lot to do with some amazing numbers. And there's a bunch of other little things tied into here. But let's talk about the stuff.
It's an interesting idea. There is a competing theory though that guys didn't have enough time to ramp up, so they couldn't throw harder because they didn't want to risk injury.
Patrick Corbin.
So yeah, exactly. Perfect example is Corbin, right? So you have that, but you also have Lamet, who's like, oh hey, I'm going to throw a little bit harder now. Honestly, I don't really put any weight into it. I think with everything else that we have thrown at us, I mean, Alex Chamberlain had a really great tweet being like, look, it's so hard I don't know what data to use anymore. We have so much good data that's like, where should I be, what should be tugging me more there? And I don't know what to say with that. So with velocity, I'm not going to incorporate it too much with I expect it to fall or not. If he has an uptick, I'm going to give it as a positive. I'm not really going to say like, oh, 2020, I can't really take that seriously. No, I think it's actually a good sign. Like the fact that you can throw that hard is a display of your ability. So yeah. I like it.
I think that's,
you agree, Paul?
Yeah, I'm pretty much to a T there. So I'm not really going to just reiterate it in a different way.
Well, I mean, but like Bauer, but there's also like Bauer is one of those examples. It is interesting. Okay, let's go into that some more.
I don't care. I don't care, but he said himself, you can't get that kind of spin improvement without using something.
Right.
So we think he didn't use something. Like, again, this is not even a call out. Because I know some people don't like him. This is not me being like super anti. It's just being honest. He absolutely used something. And secure the bag, dude. Secure the bag. Because that I think that is a justifiable if you can't beat him, join him type scenario. If you know this LA Angels guy that got in trouble is giving everybody this good stuff, and you can even make your own because he made his own. Come on. We know he made his own.
Sure, of course. It's a long, weird process, so he did it himself.
Yeah. Right. I don't care. You're not gonna do the thing we did with PEDs where we put it all on the backs of Bonds and Clemens. We're not gonna say Garrett Cole and whoever else was named there. They're gonna be the guys who wear it. When we never talk about the poop stain on Kimbrel's hat for his entire career, we just let that go. He touches it literally before every pitch, but we just let it go because he does that cool crane arm thing and he's really good. Like the selectivity of it kills me. And I got off on a tangent, but you said with regards to him, again, he did that. Is he going to do it again this year? Maybe not, because he's trying to bring attention to it. I think he actually is in a weird way, like maybe sacrificing himself. Like, I'm going to bring all this attention to it, and we'll see if they stop it and go back to an even playing field. But if
like
not,
the Shia LaBeouf of pitchers, he's just like it's an art piece that he's doing in this whole
thing. Right? Exactly. So as far as like assessing him, I am bringing him back down, but I can't go too far. Like, first off, the pitching market is just not stable enough to bring Bauer too deep down. Even if you believe he's going to maybe stop using that stuff, if they do police it more and go back a little bit to his normal tinkering, which can lead to ups and downs, you still can't get him too deep in your rankings because who can you really trust? But anyway, that's how I feel about Bauer, is that assessing that as like an on the up and up year is foolish. And we just don't know if he's going to keep the grip going for next year. So he played the Central, which was super, 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 super easy. The Mega Central was the easiest thing ever.
Yeah, he had the best schedule.
Boggs, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was on fault. Do you have something you want to do?
Go ahead. Then I'll ask.
Let me rephrase this a different way then. Do you think there is anything, and what is it, of the 2020 season that pitchers were affected by? Whether do you think there was an advantage or disadvantage to the ramp up time? Do you think, obviously you guys don't really seem to think pitchers were kind of like pulling back and getting more stuff? Like, do you
like some were, some weren't? It's depending on if they trusted themselves. Case by case gets to be a tired answer. I understand that, but it's usually the answer to things. Like, that's the tough part, is that it's almost always the answer, and you have to look, because again, you can talk about Zach Plesac amping up and going ham.
What about though, Sporer? What about the blanket statement of there were more arm injuries in 2020 than there usually are? Is that just something that, look, the game has been trending towards more arm injuries?
Oh, that's the ramp up and wild.
Yeah, that's 2020.
Yeah, I think that's 2020 mix there of like unpreparedness and trying to think. Again, I guarantee there's just throngs of guys that got a little bit softer in the tummy than they wanted to during quarantine, but still amped it up at the same rate as if they'd come back from their winter training, right? They just said, oh, I did all of that training already. I'm just going to do a little throwing here and then go full bore. And they got hurt. I think there's a lot of that sort of stuff. And maybe some of those guys were reaching back, thinking, I can reach back, dude. We're only doing this for 2 months. And then they hurt themselves. So yeah, I'm putting the injury jump up on 2020 without a doubt.
Okay. This one is so tough, and you two are the best person to ask on it. And I feel like I'm trying to dig out more because I feel like there's more. Because you're right, you are right. It is case by case. Of course, it is. Everybody's looking for overarching answers, but sometimes
the third way. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let me give you two guys. You guys have to. I'm going to keep trying to ask different ways. You guys have talked a lot about Patrick Corbin. And I think if you look, Patrick Corbin's velocity decline is very concerning. Obviously, like the amount of pitches he throws is always a concern. So, he can't really afford to be less effective with two dominant pitches. Yes. But you guys both seem to be in a little bit of defense, rightfully so. Hey, ramp up time really affected him. So that's that case. Let's verse him versus an extremely short sample size of Framber Valdez. And Framber Valdez, you want to talk about someone whose ADP is through the freaking roof right now. It's Framber Valdez, who in a short period of time had some solid results. Though, when you look, his ass got hit hard. He got, there's some luck in it. And, he was able to get away with some stuff. He got hit really hard, and there's some walk stuff with him, both things that might be concerning, yet there doesn't seem to be a bunch of concern, and people really like the stuff of what he did in a small sample size of last year. And obviously the Astros have done some good stuff with pitchers, but I ask you, look at Patrick Corbin, who I believe Patrick Corbin is going below Framber Valdez in NFBC.
90 to 140. 90 to 140. They're 50 picks.
All right, so Valdez, short sample size, not much of the track record, major leagues, got underlining, hit really hard, has walk issues. Patrick Corbin didn't get a ramp-up time. Nick Pollock, is that right? Do you buy Framber Valdez over Patrick Corbin in the defense of separate issues? These 2020s are polar opposites.
So, no, I don't. Framber Valdez, Sporer knows this. We actually, I'm actually curious where you sit with this, Sporer, because I'm someone that's generally out on Valdez. Now, I will say, since we talked, Sporer, I'm a little higher on Valdez then, but still, I would much rather go after Corbin. Now, with Valdez, it's actually interesting you did both of these guys because they're both two-pitch pitchers.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It is really shocking how good Valdez's curveball has been. I mean, we're talking like a 120 batting average allowed consistently with that pitch. But the thing is, it was in 2019 a bit, and his sinker is not that good. It did increase in velocity last year. That was nice, but I don't think that it's as good of a fastball as it needs to be for him to be a top 100 NFBC pick.
Yeah.
I mean, last year, 357 ERA, 112 whip, 26% K rate. I just don't think Valdez is that guy. I think he's more of a 22, 23% strikeout guy. His walk rate was 5.6 last year. It's not going to be that low. I mean, we don't really see guys with sub 6% walk rates these days. It was a nice run for Valdez.
Not out of nowhere either, right?
Well,
like
13% walk rate in 2019.
That's what I'm saying. And 60%, like literally out of nowhere that he stops walking guys. And it's like, wait a minute. Are you serious? Was I hard selling him in our pot?
It was more of like you were a little bit higher on Valdez than I was. But I mean, I don't really think that. I think we both agree that Corbin is above Valdez. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And I'm not super keen on him. So I'm seeing the episode where we did talk about him. I actually want to go back and listen to it myself, to be quite honest, because we covered so many pitchers that I now have so many new thoughts on.
Same here.
but I'm not hard buying on Valdez. And maybe we just had a big discrepancy where I was like, hey, give him a little credit. But you look, a 10% swinging strike rate is actually a half tick down. Irrelevant, 10.6 to 10, but it didn't go up at all, not even a shred. And he adds 6 points to his strikeout rate. That's going to be really difficult to keep up. He's really tipping the high end of what a 10% swinging strike rate can do. As Welsh mentioned, hard hit rate, very high, up to 49% on the StatCast. No, do not buy him at this price. This is full price on a breakout. And got to be honest, I prefer both Jose Urquidy and Christian Javier as far as up and coming Astros.
I've been taking Javier more than I have. I don't think I have any Framber stuff in any of the mocks we've done, but I've taken Christian Javier a couple times just because of just a multitude of pitches.
I purposely didn't take Christian Javier in our last mock because I had taken him in the other three.
But also the idea behind this, and this was a weird way for me to try to get back around to have this conversation. I think these are two of exact prime examples, Nick, of when you just want to blanket statement talk about 2020, where people will be, people on one hand will be like, yeah, you know what? 2020 doesn't count. And they'll be like, but look at Patrick Corbin. He sucked. Look at Valdez. He's amazing. Everyone's taking him in the top 100. I have to do it. So this isn't me asking the question. This is just me giving two players. They are case-by-case basis, but these I feel like have some proof and point of how you have to get around analyzing 2020 into this year.
Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, with Valdez, if there's more hard evidence, if there's more of like, oh, you know what? I think that he incorporated a changeup that's really successful in there, or his curveball was, a worse pitch in 2019, and it really transformed it.
Or like
if
an
we had
8-point
more of
jump,
those things,
or like an 8-point jump in zone rate, and more first pitch strikes, which can correlate with a drop in walks because you're getting ahead. Like he jumped his zone rate up 4 points. I don't know. Like this 6%, 5.6% walk rate seems super fraudulent. I definitely worry about that. So, it is interesting, by the way, that he does have equal 70 2/3 samples from 19 and 20.
Right?
That symmetry will probably lead you to make mistakes assessing the two, though. So I'd be careful on that. I would just assess them on the whole. I would look at all 178 and a third innings in the majors, and you get a 23% strikeout rate, 11% walk rate, 4.19 ERA, and a 136 WHIP for Framber Valdez. Honestly, you should use that as kind of your guide. I think that's a perfectly adequate guideline. That's even a little bit higher than projections. And that's no chance you're taking that at pick 90.
No
so
chance.
It's an easy pass.
One thing I will mention in favor of Valdez is that it's still Dusty Baker there, and he will get in.
Oh, I think he's going to pitch.
And that's a good thing. I mean, especially we might talk about it later, but I'm putting a weight on expected innings this year. For a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And for Amber, Dusty Baker's going to let him fly. They let Christian Javier throw like 7 innings in his first game or something like that. So
you would know the one game, by the way, that raised Framber's ERA. Like he could have had even a crazier ERA than this 5.7. This actually no, this kind of goes both ways, really. It was helped and hurt. He was kind of getting beat up, and he'd given up 4 runs by the third. Well, Dusty just kept him out there, and he's scoreless fourth, scoreless fifth, another run in the 6th, comes out for the 7th and goes 3 up, 3 down, but then brings him out for the 8th, and he puts 3 runners on, and they all score. So it was this crazy game that kind of shows the ups and downs of Dusty trusting guys. It was smart to leave him in through the 7th there, and I'm not saying this just because he ended up giving up those runners. You'd pushed it far enough, and I thought that was such a dumb move by Dusty there to let him go out into the 8th inning there for Framber Valdez.
It sounds like someone in MLB The Show that doesn't know how to switch their pitcher. Like
exactly.
How to go get another one.
Exactly. They don't notice that the meter's red.
A little red bar. It's just down here.
They just know that he's been pretty good the last few innings, so I'm going to keep going with this guy. Meanwhile, we're getting a book on him, and we're about to crush him.
Wait, you mean like when we played the show last year all the time, Sport? That was me, because I had no idea what I was doing. By the way, you guys were mentioning that you wanted Urquidy and Javier at their price more so than Valdez. Something I put out this morning was an expected early schedules for all 30 teams. Ooh. So like with the rotation. So you can actually see like the first couple weeks, like especially if it's Javier and Urquidy, who are probably like the back end of your rotation. Mm-hmm. I'm adjusting my top 100 ranks based on do I actually want to have at the start of the year.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that Urquidy, if he is the number 4, gets the Athletics twice to start the year. I'm like 50-50 if I'm okay with that.
I'm not too concerned about that.
Right.
I mean, they're even if they don't fully replace Semien, they still have a pretty good lineup. But
then Javier gets the Angels and then the Tigers, and I might be a little more excited by that.
Definitely don't draft him, dude. Bro,
Tigers,
bro.
But little things
Gross.
like that. There you go. Little things like that can actually make an impact early in the season, and also change how also other managers might treat them. If Urquidy doesn't do well against the Athletics twice, they might let him go. Then it's the Mariners after, and you might actually be able to get him for that start. So
I totally agree with this.
It's something to keep in mind.
And this is something I've been doing the last, I'd say, 2 years. Really looking at not trying to get bogged down in 6 months. We laugh at the fantasy football dipshits who are like, oh, my defense plays these teams in week 13, 15, and 500. Hey, dumbass, you have no idea how good those offenses are going to be. Trying to project that far out is insane in fantasy football and fantasy baseball. So particularly in NFBC where you're playing for an overall and everything, I start tailoring things to April and May. So what Nick's on, I completely agree with. I've been in that same boat looking at things more concisely, like the first 6 weeks. And another point that you brought up with regards to that, Nick, on your pod was the patience, right? If you're an impatient player and you're not going to stick with somebody that either isn't going to play for the first few weeks or is a rookie, then don't draft him, because you're going to cut him and you might make a mistake. You're better.
Mondesi is the prime example of that from last year,
I was
because
cutting him, so I mean I will eat that.
I mean that's fine. Yeah,
He was completely.
But it's not that surprising.
He was cut,
he
but he also
was
won
for 10
and he
He
won
absolutely
the
did.
league at
Yeah.
the end.
If you didn't cut him, if you stuck with it, I mean, that was an unbelievable transformation.
Yeah, this is the overall point to that is like, you got to know there are certain players who you're going to see at the end of the year a certain ERA and WHIP, and you're making this assumption that you're going to roster them the entire year.
Yep.
And you're not. You know, I mean, let's say even it's like you're saying, oh, I have a projection of like a 4 ERA, and you want a 4 ERA. Like by August 1st or so, let's say he has where's he going to get his good performances to make it a 4 ERA? It's a good chance it could be in August or September. So that means it's a worse than 4 ERA in August 1st, and then
40, or you could tailor it the wrong way to a 6.
But
and this is something you and I have talked about too, where I said, hey, and I levied it as a critique against you that I think you've now corrected. You're not assessing the damage that your risk pick could do before you cut them. And I think you're more cognizant of that now with regards to looking at a schedule and saying, this guy could get brutalized for 3 starts. I don't want to draft, this year's Pablo Lopez because he could get blown out. I'll draft this guy instead. Zach Davies was somebody you mentioned has a good starting schedule, who normally Nick would never pick like the next type Pablo Lopez. He would never pick Zach Davies over him. But I think you've made that adjustment in understanding what the short term looks like at the front end of the season and how patient you can be with a player.
It's interesting. I mean, on one hand, exactly right. I am changing my ranks of like, cool, I'm looking at myself 3 weeks into the season about how do I feel about this guy now. And if he has a tough schedule, I'm like, I'm not going to love him.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it does make me steer away from a lot of these, what I always say, don't draft a Toby, like these middling guys, because I don't like, when are they going to be good and bad? And halfway through the year, literally you're staring at 4 or 5 ERA, and they could settle on a 3.7 like Eduardo Rodriguez did in 2019. But like, I don't like, are you going to keep the faith?
I think that's all pitchers,
but
it's getting these globs where you got to try to make your
right. But you just have to be cognizant of yourself as a manager in season.
Yes,
that's
the biggest
an important thing that we overlook.
If you know you're not patient, don't draft players that you have to be patient with. Stop drafting the prospect that's not even projected to come up until June. If you're a patient guy, line that stuff up and you're in for the 6-month haul.
So yeah, Framber versus Corbin, huh?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
At the price.
Do you guys, Nick, do you think it's going to be harder than ever for starting pitchers to get to 6 innings pitch or even 5 innings pitch for a win? Or is that something that is steadily declining down with the specialization that's going on with pitching? And is there, outside of the Rays, is there another team that concerns you about that specifically?
That's a really good question. First of all, yes, I do believe there is a general downward trend for specialization. I will say that 2021 is weird because we're seeing more teams than ever doing a 6-man because of the limited innings last year. So that means actually then you would, right. I used to joke that 6-man rotations don't exist, but I actually do feel this year, like we've heard the Brewers say, okay, they're going to add 100 innings to everybody from last year. So then, wait, you're going to need to fill in that innings more. Maybe we do start a 6-man get involved. Maybe there's more Freddie Peralta in a weird way again, and we got to deal through that. The Tigers have said, they're heavily considering a 6-man rotation. The Seattle Mariners have already come out and said that they're doing it.
Padres.
Padres, exactly. With Adrian Morehan all of a sudden, hey, maybe he's going to get more innings, even though we didn't really expect that. Luke Casey's gone. There's also, I think the Dodgers are like the prime candidate to do a 6-man rotation. They've essentially been doing one without saying one for ages, right? So in that respect, if you're having 6-man rotations, you can let them go 6 innings. You don't have to actually pull them out as much. You can actually let them do those 6 innings because they're missing a full day. So I will say, as far as the future goes, I do think that the 6-inning stalwart is dying. As far as this year, it's a little tricky in that regard. In regards to other teams that will avoid it, Dodgers, Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin. Tony Gonsolin kind of had some weird starts going longer, but they've showcased that they're like, hey, we're going to be weird at how we use our pitchers, say for like Buehler and Kershaw. So I would be a little cautious to I
So-
hope Arias does, but I don't quite know yet.
I think he does a bit, like to the degree of getting like a 170, which would be huge for him.
So
absolutely.
that right there, let me ask this, Paul. Is the new 200 innings pitched 160? Is this should people
not
get
quite
in?
that low? Not quite that low.
Okay, well, then what is the new number?
It's
What's
still
the
probably
new?
like 180.
Yeah.
That's still kind of like that's a bit of a stalwart. By the way, Bogman asked if is this going to be the hardest year to get to 5 or 6 innings? No, 2020 was actually. I mean, it dropped to 4.8 innings per start, first time below 5, probably ever. I only went back like 10 years, but there's no way that it was lower at any other. Point. There's just no possible way.
August was the worst.
Yeah, like it was impossible, and things finally started to settle a little bit in September. You can find some guys, but yeah, it's changing, and the fantasy game is going to eventually have to change with it in terms of like because wins are just going to become too rare, and they're going to be these clusters, and like do you really want your league coming down to 1 win on the last day that gives somebody like 6 points? Because that's the kind of stuff that we could be in for because there's going to be so clustered with how few there are.
What's more in what's on the chopping block more, wins or quality starts?
I don't think quality starts is prevalent enough to be on the chopping block.
Just replace them both with innings pitched, and then just get rid of saves and stolen bases too. While you're at it.
Well, I'm fine with saves and stolen bases, but with the innings pitched, it is fine, right? People say, well, what about a guy who has a bunch of innings and he was bad though. It's like, yeah, he was bad. Like I think too much gets put on like someone could acquire bad innings. Yes, it would hurt them in the other categories while helping them in one. It doesn't. I've never found that to be a reasonable enough counter. People aren't going to roster bad innings purposely. If they build a big enough ratio lead to where they can to make up a deficit, well, that's what they did as a strategy. I don't have a problem with that.
Yep.
But for the most part, you can't just pick up whomever in an innings league and expect it to work. The only leagues you can really do that are points leagues because, if you're starting, you basically have a chance to deliver something. But I think innings are the way to go.
Do you guys think pitching should be propped up this year, or do you think it's getting overblown? Because that's where we're going. Pitching is going higher, higher, higher.
People get more confident with it. They understand that there's just not that big of a discrepancy between hitting and pitching. Pitching injury risk overall coming into the season is higher based on the number that get hurt. But when you look at the cream of the crop, I think actually, I don't know how recent the study was, but there was a study that the top cream of the crop, like top 100, the pitchers get hurt less than the hitters in that particular pool of eliteness. And so, yeah, I think it is justified. I mean, we're just seeing that what a premium starter can do in terms of changing your season. Plus, they're 1 of 9 versus 1 of 14. The math has always kind of been there. I've never really understood the overabundance of caution with drafting pitching. Like I'm sure there's comical stories from leagues where Pedro went way too late in the PED era when he should have been the number 1 overall pick in every single draft that included the American League in his heyday. And I know that injury did eventually get him, but in his like going into 2000, if he was not the number 1 pick in every draft, those were the stupidest drafts ever. And I know the drafts I was in, he wasn't, because I would have remembered a pitcher going number 1 overall.
Nick, I mean, can you do pocket aces? Are you going to be comfortable?
Oh, that's not Nick's style.
It's not
well,
me.
I know that, but that's kind of my point. It's just like you're a guy that you're very comfortable with pitching late. You understand pitching late, but pitching is getting propped up. So is that something you're going to promote to people to take their pitching early?
I will inherently say, I mean, Sporer is saying 14 versus 9. He's quoting 5 outfielders, corner infielder, and middle infielder 2. I'm
the
9.
Standard.
The standard in a 15. I mean, the standard for most is like the Yahoo 1 of 12 teamers with 3 outfielders, no corner, and no middle. So essentially, you have a more even, balanced roster in that regard.
That's talking about I talk about history of rotisserie book. That is the standard.
I understand.
Thank you very much.
I get that. Just so we have a different reference point when we talk about that. I just want to make sure that's clear. So I've been notorious to be like, hey guys, you don't need to get a pitcher until like the 7th round. I don't feel that way this year. Which is better. My general philosophy, we talked about quickly beforehand. My philosophy is you should have 4 starters that you trust before round 10 or by the end of round 10 or so. That's the goal. And how you get that is different. If you feel confident that in your draft you can just do 7, 8, 9, 10 and you have those 4, that's fine. But understanding when I say trust, I wouldn't necessarily say like Tyler Glasnow is one I trust.
Exactly.
Because it's injuries. It's not just saying, oh, I want 4 guys inside the top 10 rounds.
No,
It's that it needs to be 4 guys that I know 2 things. 1, that I expect at least 150 innings from each of them. And 2, that I know that their quality won't get to a point where I will be cutting them.
Yeah,
Now,
and you want to start them every time. And it's hard to find that.
Well, so I like you see guys like in the first 3 rounds go. I think there's some a little bit extended outside of that I've been seeing, like Kenta Maeda, Zach Gallen. I feel comfortable with.
Yep.
Lance Lynn is going outside of that. I feel very comfortable with him. Brandon Woodruff, I feel comfortable with him. Those are outside of the first 3. So as far as getting propped up to pocket aces, I don't feel you need to do that. But I am certainly acknowledging, okay, there is a more of a premium. There's a smaller crop of those to fill in that 4 that I need in the first 10 rounds.
Especially because it's a transition period in the market, because there's guys that are aging up that we're starting to develop like a little. I know one of them got hurt with Verlander, but like Scherzer, even DeGrom is no baby. Like he's still elite as all get out. But then you got, Kershaw, Darvish. We've got some guys that are older, and then some of the younger guys are not quite that locked in, proven guy. Cole is, but like even he, I think is 29 or 30 now too. So once your age starts with the 3 as a pitcher, but like Giolito, Bieber, Bueller, they don't have that track record yet that usually puts a pitcher up here, but they've been elevated early because that's where the market is right now. So we're in a transition phase. And I really do think that if you're committed to not getting one until the 7th round, you might be playing catch up. And it really depends on the league.
Not encouraging that this year at all.
Let's do the same exercise for the pitchers that we did for the hitters, Nick, where one 2020 season you're buying into, one 2020 season you're really not buying into. Either way, good or bad.
So I'm not buying into Nick Castellanos. Just kidding. No, Jordan Montgomery is someone that I think we kind of, I don't know. You see like a 5+ ERA, and you see him kind of in that mix at the bottom of the Yankees rotation now, because there's also Tyone and Kluber getting added in. Garrett Cole, of course, at number 1. I think he's been kind of forgotten about. He increased velocity last year, which is really nice to see. His changeup had a 24% swing strike rate, and that wasn't even his premier breaking stuff or secondary stuff in previous years. Curveball and slider is also there too. He's going to get wins on the Yankees. I think Jordan Montgomery is a guy that, like, I don't know, we're kind of forgetting about. We're thinking it's too much of a risk. I'm not saying he's inside that 4 that I was just mentioning, but he's certainly someone that I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna likely start him for a lot of his starts in 2021.
I completely agree with that. By the way, just the one number that kind of makes you feel a bit better about what he did. 384 Sierra skills independent ERA really just kind of looks at the underlying things that you did. Compare that to the 511 ERA, and you can understand why Nick is still bought in. Nick turned me on to Jormont a few years ago, been bought in since, sticking with him even through the thick and thin right now. And it's been a lot of thin. He had that breakout 2017, and then he's been pitched 27, 4, and 44 innings. I think 2021 is the payoff time, and I'm going to be right there investing in Jormont for sure.
What about the other way around? Someone whose season you do believe in. You see the numbers and you go, that's what's happening in 2021. Again.
Right. I totally interpret this as like, oh yeah, this is the time that I don't go after Max Fried. But no, John Means actually, in many ways, strikeout rate went way up. His last 3 starts, I think, last 2 starts, he had like 21 strikeouts, a 10 and an 11 strikeout game. I think the story of John Means is kind of forgotten with 2020. Had COVID, so had a delayed start. Was ramping in 3 innings, 4 innings, and finally he's getting there. Meanwhile, is showcasing like 96 on his fastball after being like 92 before. And this was John Means from 2019, who had a really good changeup and was a command pitcher. And also was developing, we heard in the offseason before 2020 about his curveball and slider getting more attention, and we're really excited about that. Shows up throwing like 4 miles per hour faster initially. Like, what is this? Then all of a sudden, after getting 5 innings, he's right about to turn that corner. His father passes away. The poor guy.
Yeah,
amazing.
awful.
Like, terrible. So he misses about 2 weeks. And then he has to ramp up again, and he's doing that, and we don't really see him actually going until those final few weeks when he killed it. I mean, really just dominated. He did pull down his fastball velocity a little bit at the end, but he had more command of it then. I actually don't even think his changeup was as good as it can be. It wasn't as good of a pitch when you watched it. It was more in the zone and not underneath it, at the bottom of the zone, as it typically was in 2019. I think there are improvements there that you'll see in the metrics, even though they're pretty similar as far as stat-wise from 2019 on that changeup. John Means is a guy that is just ready to go.
And imagine how good it'll be when the Orioles eventually trade him because he makes
Right.
money.
Well, eventually when they get past the Red Sox and Yankees, which unfortunately the Orioles have to face a good amount to start the year. But I'm telling you, John Means is a guy that even if I'm not comfortable saying starting him against the Yankees right away, I'm going to be happy that I've rostered him the entire season.
I'm going to give you John Means too. Someone I don't buy into. I mean, it's kind of cheating because he got hurt too, but Dinelson Lamet, and he did make me look foolish this year. This isn't like a spite pick though. It's just, I can admit that I was wrong about him for this year, but it's still a 2-pitch guy who I just don't see enough fundamental change to believe it was anything more than a hot stretch. Like, I don't think this would have held up over the full season. I mean, especially if hitters adjusted and started to spin on the slider a bit more. He got some of the silliest swings and misses this year on pitches where they had to have been dialing up for the fastball and they just got caught in between. And it's in the other batters, the slider's in the other batter's box and he's getting swings and misses. I mean, he looked great when he pitched. But also, this influx of pitching that they got tells me that they're pretty nervous about his health. So that's why I said it's a little bit of cheating. But even if it wasn't, I still wouldn't be buying him at the elevated price. I'm not paying for this breakout here. I think he's a quality pitcher who can get strikes. I do not believe him to be a premier dominant pitcher. He's peak 2-pitch, not for me, Dinelson Lamet.
Buy though. Now, which one you buy?
Brandon Woodruff. Probably just continuing on my continued buying of him. Big on him the last couple years. By the way, Nick and I had a disagreement on Burns versus Woodruff. Yeah. Burns caught up, man, over the long haul. Now we're neck and neck. Let's go.
You want to know the funniest thing is that the only reason I bought in on Corbin Burns is because he had the best pitch between them, which was a slider that he only threw 10% of the time last year,
and basically axed it this year and turned it into more of a cutter because he'd had tunneling issues. By the way, I buy in on both now. It was always like it wasn't even that either of us really disliked the other guy. We just thought we were trying to pick a winner there. And for me, it was whoever won that job I was going to go with.
You deserve that win there, Sporer.
Well, I
don't know if you knew this, Sporer, but Corbin Burns learned that cutter from the Welsh.
He absolutely did. That's why it was so good.
If I had a ball somewhere around here, I'd show you the grip, but I don't.
You only have 400 behind you.
Yeah, they're all autographed over there. So.
Can't touch them.
I know. I totally believe in Brandon Woodruff emerging as a stud, and I think we're going to see more of the same in 21. I think he's really come to the fore. He's expensive. You're paying for it, but I'm here to pay for it.
All right, so it's been a long episode of really, really good stuff, and I'm going to end it with this last question because there's more stuff we could go into, and this is going to kind of carry us into next week. We've got Derek Carty coming on, creator of The Bat, and we're going to talk. It's going to be a conversation built around projections. So I ask you two, how comfortable are you with projections of 2021? We all cite them. We all talk about them so much because it helps drive some of our own biases and helps create just some other processes in it to look, oh, this guy's up here. But as we've talked about in building up this, it is a case-by-case basis. And I guess technically you could look at it from a projection standpoint. 2021 throws a huge wrench, I think, into how projections are being spit out.
Yeah.
And there's not a full season that are put out there. Yet we are still citing them as the gospel. To me, this feels more like the Wild Wild West with projections than it ever has before. But Nick, let's start with you. How are you treating projections this year? Because the science is, you tell me how you feel about the science with a really wonky 2021 that throws all of this off, and it really can help. It's going to skew some stuff.
Right. Actually, I remember the first time I came on here, we talked about projections, and I remember said that I don't really love projections too much because it's about it's because it tells you the whole the entire season, and we make this assumption that is what we get. We get all 162 games or the entire season of a player, and we don't.
Every projection, I always love. My favorite is when you look at their ERA, it's just pretty much exactly the year before's FIP or XFIP, and it's just that is literally the processing of how it goes through. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So I think projections serve a good purpose, and that gives us an understanding, like a foundation of how, like a translation. Then we go, okay, how do we adapt from this? And if you're not having the how do we adapt from this conversation, then I think it's really just what are we doing? kind of thing. So projections are weird. As far as 2021,
Do you trust them less than any other year? That's kind of what I'm asking you. Is do you trust them less?
Probably, because what are we supposed to do? This is so difficult. This is so hard. It's already stupid hard. And now we have like a worse foundation to build them on. I'm not saying that the work that guys like Cardi Do Pod does, so many others in the industry, Steamer, are bad. Simborski with Zips, like they do unbelievable work. It's just, man, this is stupid and hard, and like, good luck. We can't treat them like gospel, unfortunately, as much as we want to. We just can't. These are humans. And there's nuance and stories and things change. So, yeah, I would treat them just as having a baseline, understand how you want to adapt from there.
I mean, Paul, are you going to be that gentle about it? Or do you think it's even longer than ever before? Because, Nick was very, very poetic about that and very like that. Like, this is Nick Pollock and I approve this message. But what I'm getting at here is like projections are usually it's not always, but, they'll take like a 3-year look. How do you do that with 2020? So do you
include it? I've never really given that much weight to projections in the first place. Maybe that's why I don't win enough. Maybe I should be doing it. But I'm not gonna give a ton of weight to it. I'm gonna kind of look at them. Honestly, I'll look at the same things I look at them currently, which is their underlying skills, namely their strikeout walk rate and where they're at with that. Of course, that's more of like averaging stuff as you guys were saying anyway. So I don't know. I respect the work. I love to look at them. That's the interesting thing. I love it.
Yeah.
So, looking at them means they're definitely playing some bias.
Like the article from Playboy with projections.
Exactly. But also, you also kind of want to know where the market's going to be on things too. And knowing the projections can help you with that. Right. So, I don't look at a projection and automatically say, I believe that, I'm in. If a projection stands out to me for one way or another, it causes me to look deeper and to see what's driving that. And then maybe I'll alter my position on a guy. But I don't even think that the folks who make these would want you to just take the numbers that they spit out, the ERA and WHIP, I don't think that you want to take any of it too seriously.
Our chat is too hot right now. Our chat on the background here is too hot. We're all dying here. Bachman's killing us. That's a perfect way to do it because I feel like I see so much conversation around projections. People love to cite them. The only thing I feel like that has been missing is the same people will be like, 2020, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, but look at these projections for this year. And it's like, well, how is those two pieces not tied into the same?
How were those people at first when they were looking at projections?
That's how they are. Let's take a screenshot of our conversation over here because it's the best.
Whatever.
Oh, no.
All right. We have gone an hour and a half with two of the best in the industry, and that's why they're the best in the industry because they give us that time. You guys love listening to them, and sometimes they do a pod together, doing the fireside chats. Sporer, what's going on in your world on Twitter at Sporer? Obviously, all the great Twitch stuff. Give us what do people need to be? I don't know. What do people need to be looking out for? Subscribing to, subbing to.
Fangraph 6.0 is going to revolutionize baseball. Okay, I've been working on things. All right, I took a trip to New York, unrelated to where Nick lives. Don't think about it. And I've got some great ideas. Fangraph 6.0 coming. When's yours coming out, Nick?
2 weeks and change, maybe 3.
Early
days. February.
10 days. Fangraph 6.0. 10 days from now, gonna have the latest, hottest ideas ever. No, I'm just kidding. At Twitter. At Sporer on Twitter and on Twitch, baseball all the time. I got stuff coming out. Got an SP update coming. But let's turn it over to Nick and see if we can get a little something. Give us a taste, please. Come on. The folks that listen to an hour and a half of this, can we get a taste of something that hasn't been on the on the corner pod? Give us just a little something because you got so much planned. I know you can give us a little present, little something.
You have to do, it's like a present.
Little something about 6.0 because I'm super geeked about it. I'm super excited. I know you got crazy plans.
I keep this close to the chest. I actually haven't shared with Sporer, guys. So this is literally this
is why I'm begging for everyone, y'all. I don't know.
All right,
everyone.
A couple of things. One, it is 6.0. It is. I don't know what Fangraphs is doing with theirs, but
no, we're not.
No, I don't need it. I don't need it. Obviously not. No. Sporer, I just want to thank you for your promo being my promo. Well, at the very least, I mean, I think I've gotten like a tweet a day, at least not multiple, but asking where to find a CSW leaderboard. Like 100%, we're giving you all a CSW leaderboard.
Love it.
Yeah, that's absolutely. We're making PL Plus better. We're actually adding some things to it. That is one thing we're adding are player alerts, where if you get it, you can actually create your own little mini feed of authors or articles or players that inside your account page, you actually just have those inside of that. So if you like certain people, you can actually just follow their articles and you have your own little mini feed. And more things. And it's not going to cost more to get that player alerts. It's going to be the same cost of PL Plus. So that's all I'm willing to do. We've got other things that I just, little bits.
It's worth it.
Little bits.
If you're not familiar with what Nick does every year at PitcherList, right after the Super Bowl, the next 0.0 comes out. We're on 6.0, and it's always big changes. They actually make different fundamental changes to the site, whether it's the way it looks, the way it operates. Sounds like this year it's going to be a lot of operational stuff, which is going to be great because it already looks beautiful. So
literally like Paul and Bogman and Welsh, we all just doing the same thing. We're just out here, we do us, and they're making big moves and big changes. And you can follow them on Twitter at PitcherList, at Sporer. You guys are the best. We love you guys. Miss hanging out with you this past year over at First Pitch. I always look forward to it.
Biggest bummer of the year.
I feel like I'm still waiting for that to happen.
In terms of like what I missed, obviously there were much bigger bummers, like 400,000 people dying. It's a pretty awful year overall, but missing First Pitch, really.
Yeah, I mean, 2018 was the first time we got to meet Nick and Paul. You and I had that. We had a nice little dinner at the hotel. We were you and me hanging out before everybody, and just miss all that. So miss you guys. You guys do the best work. We respect you and we love you, and like you guys giving us this time is awesome. And believe me, the projections are like Instagram models. Comment will be on a T-shirt soon that Bogman made here. It's gonna be awesome. So be on the lookout for it. For Sporer and Nick, we love you guys, and thank you.
Love y'all too.
You guys are the best. See you.